Aloha mai kākou. This is Kumulili Kala again talking to you from parts away about Kunuiakea and the Aha ceremonies. When we last were in class, we talked about how Ku became a war god before he used to be a fishing god. He used to be a god of medicine and of carving, but now he's a war god. So these are the ceremonies we had started to talk about in last class, and we got to a certain part of it, and now we're going to continue on. And I've actually divided this lecture now into 3 lectures. So this is part 2, and after this will be part 3. We just saw them going to the mountain in our last lecture and cutting down the Ohi'alehua tree that will be made into the war god Ku, or Tukunuiakea. And now we're going to see how they pick pala fern and bring that tree down from the mountain. So here we go. Remember that this reading comes from David Amalo's Hawaiian Antiquities, and this is a section on about the Luakini. So in number 41, it talks about how then the people went for pala fern, making backloads of it, and they gathered the fruit and the flowers of the mountain apple, the ohia, which is a food that is eaten like apple, if you haven't had ohi'ai, or mountain apple, and it is a body form of ku, so they're eating of it. Until the hands of everyone was filled with the bouquet. Then some of them, bearing the idol, they started on their way down to the ocean with tumultuous noise and shouting. So they're carrying pala fern because the pala fern represents the female. And they've successfully finished one section of their prayers, the Mauha'alelea. They have cut the tree, they have offered the man in sacrifice, they have cooked the pig, and now they're going to take all of this down to the mountain. Not the pig, they ate it up there, they buried it up there. But they buried that man up there to give Ku the sacrifice that he wants, so that he will come down from the mountain to be with them. And as they come down the mountain, they're going to call Kuamu, Kuamumu, Kuawa, Kuawawa. I go to victory, Uo. And they're making a loud noise as they come down the mountain. Now you can read what Malo is saying, and please do read what he says. I'm going to talk about what he says, okay, instead of reading it all together for you. They are bringing this God body down the mountain. And as they come down, they need to make a lot of noise so no one gets in their way. Because if anyone, any man, woman, or child gets in their way, they'll be killed because the God is coming from the mountain. So then Malo says, on arriving at the heiau, they put the image on the level pavement of the temple court, and having covered it with ie leaves, they left it. Ie is the body form of Kapo, and so that's another thing, that the female is covering the body of this image that is about to be carved. So in the evening, they'll measure off the foundation of the mana house, and they'll figure out where it's going to stand, how it's built, and then they say a post was then planted at the back of the mana house directly opposite its door of entrance. This upright was termed a nanahua post, and it marked the place where the image of Luamu was to be set. A post was also planted between the makaiva, the images of Lono. So there are special images that are carved for Lono, and they have they're called makaiva. They have shell eyes. The images of Lono at the spot where the image called Mo'i was to be set up. So between the 2 makaiva images will be the Mo'i, the Ku god that's going to be put there. The post was called the Pillar of Manu, Kapo o Manu. The ensuing night, stakes were driven to mark the 4 corners of the mana house, after which the king and priest went to carry the measuring line, Ikai, Ika aha hele honua. So they're using that rope, the aha rope, to carve up a section of the land, or to pace off a section of land where they're going to increase the mana of the god. The priest stood at the corner post of mana while he repeated the prayer, and by him stood the king, holding the sacrificial pig. When the prayer was over, the kahuna stooped down and took the end of the line in his hands. So here we have a drawing of a heiau, a luakini, with the halimana in one side of the temple. Notice it's facing the entrance into the temple. Then he ran from that stake to the next, gave the line a turn about the stake, then to the next, and did the same thing there. Thence he returned and rejoined the king at the spot where the prayer had been made. Then, having said Amanna, the king dispatched the pig by beating him against the ground. So he kills another pig. This done, the priest inquires of the king, "How is our incantation, our aha?" And if no voice, no noise had been heard, the king answered, "The ceremony, the aha, was good." Thereupon the kahuna assured the king that his government was firmly established because, said he, the land-grabbing ceremony, the ahahele honua, has just been successfully performed. It was a special priest who officiated at this ceremony. On the next day, Kulu, the people came in multitudes, bringing timber, cord, leaves of the lolu palm, and uki grass, with which to build and thatch the different houses, the drum house, the vaiea, the manna, the oven house. When the frames of the houses had been set up, the thatching was left to be done after the kawila ceremony had been performed. So you see there's a certain order to the way they're building up the temple and all the things they do there. On the day Kulua, the Kawila Nui celebration took place. It was conducted in this manner. The king and a company of men were stationed a short distance away at a place called Kalava, the kahuna and the bulk of the people being by themselves and not far away. This was on the level ground, Papahola, outside of the heiau, the whole multitude of people being seated on the ground in rows. Now, this is not all men. This is not all Maka'inana men. These are mostly, chiefly men of different ranks who are the multitude of people. Then the keepers of the Ka'ai gods came, each one bearing the Ka'ai god of his chief. The Ka'ai god of the king was also there. The number of these idols was very great. The god Kahoali'i also was personated. The god Kahoali'i was also personated by a man in a state of nudity. Now, the Ka'ai gods are generally made out of senet. Some of them have feathers around them, some of them do not. Some of them are wooden, which as you can see, this wooden carved god is on a pole. All of these gods are carried on poles, and so they are carried aloft by various chiefs who are there to take care of them. There is a man who will be leading the procession. He's naked, and he is called Kahoali'i. At this juncture, the Ka'ai gods being held aloft, each on his spear decorated with a banner, the kahu of each sat in front of the god of his charge, waiting for the signal to run in a circle about all the Ka'ai gods. If any kahu, however, made a mistake in this circuit running, he was put to death, and the duty of the running then devolved upon the ali'i, to whom belonged the idol, or the Ka'ai god. When all of the people were ready, the priest of the temple came forward, arrayed in a large white malo, and carrying in his hand a bunch of pala fern. Remember, the pala represents the female, right? He was accompanied by a man carrying a human skull containing seawater, kai. Kaya Pokea was also the name applied to the prayer, which the kahuna now repeated. A very long prayer it was. So this is a way of blessing. They're using pala fern instead of tea leaf to sprinkle this water. At the same time, Kahoali'i, the man god, stood forth in front of the Ka'ai gods, his nakedness visible to the whole multitude, and the moment the priest uttered the following words of incantation, Kahoali'i then started on the run in all his nakedness, and all the Ka'ai gods followed after in regular order. They took a circular course, all the time paying close attention to the prayer of the kahuna, and when he came to the words, Amio ikalani o mamalu, Kahoali'i turned to the left, and all the Ka'ai gods followed, turned also and came back. On their return, they came to where was standing a man with a staff in his hand, who joined their company, and they all came back together. The man whom they had met then took his station in the space between the people and the Ka'ai god, still holding his staff in his hand. Then the high priest asked him in the words of the prayer, "To whom belongs the earth? To whom belongs the earth? No vai honua, no vai honua." "The earth belongs to Ku," answered the priest. "A priest has ratified the transaction." "Hanamai a mana ki kahuna." Then the kahuna again asked the question of this man, who was himself a kahuna, and he answered, "To Ku belongs the small pieces of land. No ku kahai ma kau kau." The houses were then thatched, the drum house, the oven house, vaiea and manna, after which the people brought presents of pigs, coconuts, bananas, red fish, also oloa, kapa, to serve as malos for the idols, braided sugar cane for the thatch of the anu'u mamau, same as the lananu'u mamau, as well as for the manna. This accomplished, all the people turned to their houses. That same evening, Kulua, the Haku Ohia idol, was brought in from the paved terrace, Papahola, and set in the place which had been specially reserved for it, that being a spot where the pillar of the Manu had been planted. So by this time they've carved all parts of the image, all the rough stuff is off, and it's beautiful and ready to go into the hole. So the hole cannot be left open because that calls for death. When they dig a hole for this image to go in, they cannot just leave it open. So that's why they put the po o manu inside to seal the hole until they're ready to put the kunuiakea god up. The post hole in which this idol Haku Ohia was set was situated between the Makaiva images directly in front of the Lana Nu'umamau, that is the prayer tower, and close to the lele, or the altar, on which the offerings were laid. There it stood with no malo upon it. At this time, none of the idols had malos girded upon them, not until the evening when this image, the Haku Ohi idol, had been arrayed in a malo, with the rest of them be so covered. While in this unclothed state, the expression used of them was, "The wood stands with its nakedness pendant." Uaku leva lava kala'au. Of course, the la'au is that part that hasn't been covered. Yeah? Then a priest stood forth and conducted a service for the setting in his place of this idol, which service was called Kapopo Anna. A man who was a criminal was first killed and his body thrust into the hole where the idol was to stand. The man was sacrificed in order to propitiate the deity, and when the service was done, the chiefs and the priests returned to their homes, keeping in mind the work to be done that night. So this is the second man who is a criminal that has been killed in the Ku ceremony. The special burden of their prayers was that it might not rain that night, that there might be no wind, or thunder, or lightning, that there might be no heavy surf, that no fire should burn, and there should be no sound or outcry from voice of man or beast, that the whole night until day, for this would conduct the service, this conduct of the service be perfect. This was the character of the Luakini service from ancient times down. So when it's completely silence, they know that the Akua, or the god Ku, is present. And that's why everything has to be quiet. That night, some of the people left their houses and lay in the open air for the purpose of observing the heavens. And if a cloud appeared in the sky, they prayed that everything that could mar the ceremony of the night might be averted. So the silence shows the god is there, and all the places being silent around there, all things being quiet, even the ocean, is done through the power of prayer by the people who are at the temple. When the Milky Way was visible and the sky became clear overhead, if it had been perhaps overcast, and all sounds were hushed, then the king and the high priest went into the house of Vaiea, and were there together by themselves to conduct the service, the aha. The multitude of the people remained at a distance in front of Manna, listening lest any noise should be heard to make the ceremony nugatory. Olilo ke kai aha anna. The king stood and held the pig, and the priest stood and recited the service, which was called hula hula. Until the close of the service, the king hearkened if every noise was quiet, and then he perceived that the aha was perfect. Then the king dashed the pig against the ground until it was dead, and offered to the gods, saying, O Ku, O Kane, and Kanaloa, here is a pig. Keep and preserve me and safeguard the government. Amen. It is free. The tabu flies away. Notice the pig represents Lono. That's what's being sacrificed, is Lono. Lono's time is finished and Ku's time is come. Also, I have to ask again, how do they kill the pig without making a noise? That's pretty interesting, but they're dashing him against the ground, no noise. Then the kahuna asked the king, how is the aha you and I have performed? He repeated the question, how is the aha you and I have performed? Then the king answered, the aha is perfect. The king and the priest went out to the people waiting outside, and the king put the question to the people, how is our aha? Thereupon they answered, the aha is perfect. We have not heard the smallest sound, kimi. And the whole assembly broke out into a loud shout, lele valika aha lele valaka aha. With frequent reiteration, the aha is completely successful. Literally, the aha flies away. Then the news was carried to the people outside of the temple, and everybody rejoiced that the king had obtained his aha, and all believed that the government would enjoy great peace and prosperity during the coming years. The next morning, Kukolu, the high priest who had conducted the ceremony of hula hula, and who was the head priest of the Luakini, took it upon himself to join the priest of the Haku Ohia idol in a fast. That priest was already doing a fast in honor of the god. So they fasted together during those days. During the days of fasting, they sustained themselves on the honey of banana flowers. The high priest was fasting in preparation for the ceremonies still remaining. The Haku Ohia priest, in order to make the idol into a real god, Akua Mauli. So that one part of the aha was done when they put the post into the ground. Now here's another section of the aha ceremonies that we'll be seeing.